Funny thing is, time for me is different than it is for you. I used to have to grasp onto time in a way that an adult notices a child. These contacts are fucking with me now. Now my concept of time is misconstrued greatly, but that's an explanation for another time. My hunts are kind of exciting at first, it seemed. I did that. Yep, I did that. My hunts are kind of exciting at first. It seemed many of the older vampires were the ones fleeing to the new world for a new beginning. Some even hiding surprisingly from me. Of course I was thrilled by this. May have even been a bully at times, before eventually coming to terms with their lives being left intact for some of them. I'd never been one for coming to deals. I suppose it was something new to me. I was turned without even a choice, in reality. I saw an opportunity to have them work for me. And because at that juncture in my life, I saw fit that they could construct themselves in cities and towns that are high in crime. The only rule was they fed on humans that were murderers, rapists, child molesters, etc. Surprisingly, it worked well for many decades. It gave me many, many years to investigate into the magic of the native people. Sadly, I didn't plan for when their numbers grew. And the younger vampires just didn't believe the stories anymore about the immortal that fed on immortals. Needless to say, dear readers, this was just the beginning of a short-lived rebellion in the future United States. How about we start with the simplest of things to explain? At that time, there weren't any true cities or towns. If I am confusing anyone, I'd like you to take out your history book and let me fill you in on some gaps. Roanoke Island was the first of many colonies over time that I would be forced to deal with. Even though it was a short-lived colony, the vampires took it over in one of my short absences one summer, when I had traveled to what is now known as Mexico. In truth, I was there for knowledge into the natives there. Sadly, humans are just as destructive as any race and just as violent. But upon my return to Virginia, I came across a colony overridden by corrupt young vampires by the name of John Reckon. And he was the first of many over time that searched the pages of history for my weakness. He had completely taken over Roanoke Island colony, and every single human was enslaved. John himself was a character, though. His father was a wealthy Englishman that had sent his own son across the ocean to find his own path. It didn't take long for anyone to realize that he was a spoiled brat. Not even his own father wanted to deal with him anymore, hence being sent across the sea. He was young, arrogant, and completely self-absorbed. He had a Hercules complex as a man, and this was all multiplied as a vampire. But he also was very intelligent. He spoke several languages. He had a tongue like a salesman. In Roanoke, he had a small army of vampires, and they were hell-bent on serving this young man like a king of all vampires of some sort. This drove me mad because he didn't hold to any of my rules I had placed upon the older vampires decades before. This was the beginning of a 3-decade hunt for dear John. That would end with several colonies' destruction, the very first being brainwashed by him, so I removed them all from the colony. Men, women, even the children had to lose their own lives because of this man. I couldn't leave a single soul there for the fear of their own rise up against humanity. The evil I felt there that day still resides there yet today. As cruel as that briefly placed description is, it's nothing compared to what would have happened if I hadn't stepped in and intervened. The hardest thing to understand about old John was not the why, it was the how. As I said before, he had a salesman's tongue, but the things he was feeding into the minds of others were completely ludicrous. Proclaiming himself to be the rightful king of immortals many, many times, speaking as if he here were pure blood or something. In truth, there is to this day no such thing as a pure blood vampire, as of my own knowledge. As I said before, as far as I know, werewolves are the only immortals capable of reproduction. John was relentless in trying to gain control of an army in the end, After decades and decades of research about me alone, an army to subdue me was the only thing he had as an answer. The population of the New World was growing and growing. The numbers of his better described as a cult were growing as well. For the time being, I was at standstill. I knew the problem would be solved by taking the head of the snake. Unfortunately, he was very clever and never disclosed to anyone that wasn't traveling alongside him where he was going. In the winter of 1633, I tracked him down, 100 miles south of what will be Boston. He had a well-guarded stronghold, vampires and werewolves as well. From the smells, I was guessing 50 or so. Seemed like a party in mind. I didn't know what it was that I didn't know what I was walking into. He had mustered over 120 strong, and as well as 10 witches, powerful witches. There was one in particular that was exceptionally strong and young, so young. My conscience got the best of me as well as my curiosity, given she was scared shitless